This is an iHeart podcast.
Welcome in, everyone, to Lively Lewis Stories.
That's right. We're back with even more awesome adventures with Levi and Ivy.
Set your storytime meter to fun and get ready to join the Lively Lewis crew.
All you need is your imagination and...
Off we go! I can't wait to see where our story takes us today.
Have you ever wanted to get more Lively Lewis in your life?
Well, we've got you covered.
Grab an adult and zoom over to livelylewisshop.com.
Or just click on the link in our show notes.
Enough about that. Let's get to today's super Lively Lewis story.
In a forgotten part of the forest, behind Levi and Ivy's house, there stood a grove of elm trees. And no matter the time of year, the leaves were the most brilliant shades of green, red, orange, and yellow. They shimmered in the afternoon sun each day and glowed beneath a blanket of stars each night. For as long as anyone had known, this little part of the forest was something special. Anyone who had ever stumbled upon it took away from their journey tales of magical events and mystical creatures. Levi and Ivy had heard the tales before from their parents and their grandparents who were lucky enough to have visited this special place. But in the last year, no one spoke of the extraordinary village in the woods anymore. And this was something that made Levi and Ivy want to see why. Maybe the land was gone. Maybe the fairies and the mermaids found a new place to live. Or maybe the enchanted forest was just a story and never really existed at all. Levi and Ivy had to find out the answer. One thing they remembered from hearing tales of the enchanted land was that the two groups that called the place home were fairies and mermaids, and they didn't always get along. But the love for their forest home allowed them to live together. The fairies and the mermaids each had an equal amount of magic to use in the forest. However, each group wished to control all the magic in the land. So instead of deciding the best thing for them to do was share the magic, working together to create greatness throughout the forest that they could all enjoy, the two groups kept to themselves. They were kind to each other, respecting each other's space in the enchanted forest. But because so little magic was being used, the forest began to crumble and fall apart. But neither the fairies nor the mermaids came forward to try and make things better. The forest was losing its magic, becoming nothing more than a legend. Levi and Ivy had to do something about this. And one summer afternoon, they grabbed some snacks, told their parents they'd be playing in the woods behind their house, and took off for a great adventure. Only a little time passed before they found themselves in the forgotten part of the forest. The vines were overgrown, the flowers that surrounded them were wilted and frail, and the grove of elm trees definitely didn't look how they had imagined it. These were the first few signs that they would see, proving that the enchanted forest was in great need of help. "I knew it was real! I just knew it!" shouted Levi. "Me too! I knew Mom and Dad and Grandma and Grandpa were telling us the truth," added Ivy. "But it does look a little bit different than when they described it." "More like a lot different," replied Levi as he pushed back the tall grass and walked toward the grove of elm trees. "Weren't these trees supposed to be full of bright and colorful leaves?" "Yeah, that's what we were always told. But maybe this is our first clue as to why the forest seems to be disappearing," said Ivy as she walked past Levi, through the grove of trees and down a long path. They stepped over fallen tree branches and thorn bushes that seemed to cover the ground. This was not how they had seen their adventure going. Levi and Ivy thought, or at least hoped, that they would be welcomed into a magical, beautiful forest by fairies and mermaids, making friends with them and learning all about their special home. Instead, they found themselves in the middle of a sad-looking situation, filled with drab colors and small houses that looked like they were falling apart. "You'd think, with all the magic that's supposed to exist here, that this place would look amazing," said Levi. "It did once," said Ivy. "At least that's what we were told. It's our job now to figure out what happened and how we can help. I think the best way to do that is to talk with someone that lives here." "I suppose you could talk to me," said a voice coming from the edge of the river, "because I'm very helpful, unlike the fairies around here." "You're helpful. Don't make me laugh," said a second voice that seemed to sail over their heads through the breeze. "The reason our home looks like this is because of you." "No way. It's because of you." Levi and Ivy knew they had to follow the voices, quickly heading toward the river. When they arrived at the shore, they were very encouraged by what they saw. A crystal clear waterway that flowed past waterfalls and filled with lovely plants. "Hello?" called out Levi as he looked around, trying to find whoever had been talking to them. "Hello, can you please come out so we can talk to you?" added Ivy. "We're here to help." Upon hearing this, the voices began to chatter back and forth, each trying to be the first one to get Levi and Ivy's attention. Then both at once, the people behind the voices popped up in front of Levi and Ivy. That was when they met Maris, a bold and mischievous mermaid who loved her forest home, and Sylphie, a strong and curious fairy who loved her home just as much. Maris swam to the edge of the shore and popped her head out of the water as Sylphie fluttered overhead before landing softly on a giant flower petal. Levi and Ivy couldn't believe their eyes as they saw before them a mermaid and a fairy. They tried to act quickly, seeing that these two didn't have the same point of view on what was happening to their beloved magical forest home. Levi and Ivy started by introducing themselves and telling their new friends the wonderful tales they had heard about the enchanted forest. "But we actually haven't heard very much recently, so we decided to come out here ourselves and see what was going on," began Levi. "And once we got to the grove of elm trees, it was pretty obvious that the forest was falling apart and in need of some help," added Ivy. "We know you must love this place, and we're here to do whatever we can to help you return it to the wonderful, magical place we have always been told that it was." Maris and Sylphie listened closely, liking what they heard. Even though they didn't always get along, they both agreed on one very important thing. They loved their home and were both sad to see it losing its magic. "I'd be happy to work with you," said Maris. "I couldn't care about anything more than turning the forest back into what it used to be." "Well, I'm happier to help you," added Sylphie. "And I care about saving this forest way more than Maris does." "That's not true," shouted Maris. "Is too," Sylphie shouted back. "Can you please stop fighting?" said Levi. "It's clear you both love this place, and since you've been living here your whole lives, surely one of you knows what we need to do to make it better. Do we need to find some hidden gem in an underwater cave, or uncover some great map that will show us the way, or face some menacing monsters?" asked Ivy, trying to figure out how they could help. Maris and Sylphie were silent and looked at each other as they rolled their eyes. Then they whispered something that Levi and Ivy couldn't quite hear. "Can you speak louder? We didn't hear that," said Levi as he and Ivy leaned in to listen closely. "We said we need to combine our magic," said Maris and Sylphie. Levi and Ivy then breathed a huge sigh of relief, hearing how easy it would be for Maris and Sylphie, since they both clearly loved the enchanted forest. Levi and Ivy both wondered if that was all they had to do to restore the forest's full magic. Why didn't they do it already? They asked, and this is what they heard. "It's not that easy," said Maris. "The mermaids and the fairies always wanted to use their magic for different things. For example, Sylphie wants to use our combined magic to grow bigger trees for more fairy houses and add a new species of flowers and berry bushes to be used as food and decorations around the village." "That sounds wonderful to me," added Sylphie. "Because those are way better ideas than using our combined magic for things that Maris and the other mermaids like more, like waterfalls and more crystals and shells for the underwater homes. The lake is the last truly magical place in the forest. Just look at it. But if nothing gets done soon, the lake will look like the rest of this place in no time." Wow. Wait a second. "I think all of your ideas sound great," said Levi. "Why can't you do all of them?" "Because we don't have enough magic to do everything," said Maris. "And for the last year or so, we haven't been able to agree on what to do. So, we haven't done anything." "Yep, that's why the forest looks the way it does," added Sylphie. "If we don't keep using our magic, it will start to disappear until one day when it'll just be gone forever." Levi and Ivy couldn't believe what they were hearing. It was a simple case of sharing and working together for a common good, something that would benefit everyone who lived in the enchanted forest village. But Maris and Sylphie wanted their own way so badly they couldn't see that. And since they were the oldest in their groups, they were each in charge of their magic and got to make the final call on how it was used. Or not used in this case. "Have you asked the other mermaids and fairies what they think about all of this?" asked Levi. And before Maris and Sylphie had a chance to answer, fairies filled the air as mermaids swam to the lake's surface to voice their opinions. Levi and Ivy could tell they didn't agree with how Maris and Sylphie were handling the situation and wanted the magic brought back to their enchanted forest home as quickly as possible. This made Levi and Ivy think of a similar situation that they had just worked through the week before. They thought maybe telling that story to Maris and Sylphie would help them see how working together to help the forest as a whole was the best thing to do. It all started when Levi and Ivy had each gotten some money from their neighbor for helping her with some yard work. They were very excited because they each wanted to use that money, along with some birthday money they had saved up, to get a new video game. However, they had not fully decided on which game to get. Then, when they got to the store, Levi picked up the video game he thought he and Ivy wanted and walked to the register to pay, asking Ivy for her half of the money to pay for it. But what he didn't see was that Ivy had picked out another video game and was just about to ask Levi for his half of the money so they could buy that one. When they saw what had happened, Levi and Ivy tried to convince the other of why their game was the best and why it should be the one they took home. It was clear after a few minutes that the discussion was getting them nowhere, and they left the store upset and without a new video game. What we learned after a few days of being upset with each other and not getting our own way was that it would be way more fun to be playing together, said Levi. Even if that meant we didn't have the video game we wanted. He's right, added Ivy. We thought we could either keep being upset with each other, which was no fun at all, or we could work together, combine our money, and get a video game we both liked. We sat down and had a conversation, going through all the video games we liked until we found the one we both wanted, said Levi. And while we didn't get the game that we each originally wanted, we got a game that made us both happy, said Ivy. Then the house was filled with more joy and happiness because we were playing together again. Do you understand what we're saying? Asked Levi, looking at Maris and Sylphie. And thankfully for the whole entire forest, they did understand, and they decided it was time to work together, joining mermaid and fairy magic to bring back the wonderful enchanted forest they all knew and loved. That afternoon, Levi and Ivy helped as Maris and Sylphie made a list of all the things they wanted. Things that the mermaids would enjoy, as well as the things the fairies would enjoy. Then they created another list that combined all the things that they could enjoy together and a few things that they could each enjoy separately. Like more flowers for the fairies and more lake crystals for the mermaids. This looks amazing, declared Maris. I completely agree, said Sylphie with a big smile. And just like that, mermaid magic and fairy magic were once again combined to bring back the splendor and extraordinary magnificence of the enchanted forest. Maris, Sylphie, and all the other mermaids and fairies couldn't thank Levi and Ivy enough for all their help. They immediately noticed how much better they felt by working and living together, and wished they had met Levi and Ivy sooner. That day, as Levi and Ivy walked home from that forgotten part of the forest, they felt a great sense of happiness, knowing they left it a lot better than when they had found it, teaching the magical, mystical creatures that live there the importance of compromise and sharing.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the story and learned a little something too.
And since we know everyone has their own story, we'd love to hear yours.
If you have an idea for a Lively Lewis story, leave a comment on our Apple Podcast review page with 5 stars, your idea, and your little one's name.
Then maybe our next adventure will be with you.
Until our next Storytime Hangout.
Thanks for listening. We can't wait to share another fun Lively Lewis story with you.
This is an iHeart podcast.